like to drive around and talk about the latest happenings. This is the channel you need, so subscribe and follow Carmentary.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Carmentary. My name is Neil, and today I'm going to talk about the Niseko rules. The Niseko rules. What are the Niseko rules? What are they there for? Well, if you've been to Niseko and you've skied at any of the resorts, you've probably seen signs. There'll be trail maps, and usually on the side of the trail map there'll be something that says the Niseko rules or the Niseko local rules. If you search on the web, you will find many sites that have the rules listed. It's kind of I think some people may be like taken aback by it, like, what is this Niseko rules? You don't see that at many other ski resorts. I don't think internationally you would go to like Mammoth Mountain and go, the Mammoth Mountain rules, the Mammoth Mountain local rules. It's pretty basic and generic stuff. If you really look at the rules, I can put it in the description below this video. Basically stuff like, don't duck the ropes, don't cut the ropes, don't go outside of the gates when they're closed. Like super common sense, like you should know that kind of stuff in general. I believe during the 2021 season or 2021-2022 season, I can't remember which, but they made wearing helmets outside of the gates mandatory. Now, I don't know how much that is being enforced. You will oftentimes see patrol standing at the gates. Niseko has a series of gates that let you access the side country. We'll get into that in a minute. And in the morning when they open up the gates, you will see patrol there, and many of the gates, if not all of them, have beacon testing devices. So one of the rules is that you're supposed to have your transceiver, your shovel, probe, all your basic avalanche backcountry gear, helmet, etc. When you go to the gate, the beacon checker goes beep and gives you the green light, and you're free to go in. And oftentimes they'll have a patrol member standing there, kind of, not like security guard, like checking everybody in detail, but just showing a presence, just sort of being there. But then you'll go later in the day and there'll be nobody there. You see people go through the gates without beacons, without shovels, probes, no backpack. You see people go in with backpacks, but literally nothing inside of it except a water bottle, etc., etc. It's kind of a free-for-all in some ways, but that is the system that has been set up. And it kind of relates to why there is such a thing as the Niseko local rules. Back in the day, you have to understand the history. Niseko and Japanese ski resorts in general, it's not privately owned land. It's government land, it's national park land, there's a lot of strict government rules relating to how the resorts can operate and use the mountains. And in general, the resort owners only rent the land where the courses have been built. So they get permission to maybe create a resort, they cut down trees, they make a course, and literally they can only use the space where those trees have been cut and they've designated as a course. Everything outside of that is considered out of bounds and not the resort's responsibility, property, etc. So that's the way it always was. There were always ropes, lots of ropes, and you couldn't go into the trees, and etc., etc. Over the years, as more foreign people came in, more people wanted to ride in the trees. It became quite a scene where there would be people ducking the ropes and riding all the time. Not all foreign, Japanese as well. And over time, there was a movement among the local community who wanted to ride those zones and those trees. And they kind of forced a bargain. They forced a settlement, if you will, with the local resorts and the local governments to say, look, let's at least set up these gates. Everybody has to go through the gate. It's built in a safer spot so that people don't cut ropes and drop in dangerous sections. And somehow they pulled it off. That would be a whole documentary series in itself, but somehow they were able to convince basically the government to kind of turn a blind eye and say, hey, there's this gate, people go out of it, and then they come back at the bottom and they go up on the gondola again, and we just sort of ignore it until there's some kind of a major accident or a search and rescue mission is needed, and then it can become a bit of an issue, but at least that person went out through the gate, you know? It's like, it's sort of semi-official. Maybe this is a very Japanese kind of way of doing things in a way, but those gates were set up, and it became a very successful system, I would say. It allowed all these people to access the side country and the back country in a sort of official manner. But you have to remember that you are going out of the ski resort boundaries when you go out of those gates. So the rules were set up to kind of talk about those gates, let people know that, you know, you have to go through the gate, you shouldn't duck the ropes, please do this, do that. Another interesting rule that's like one of the last rules is elementary age children are not allowed to go out of the gates by themselves. They must be accompanied by an adult. Which is kind of cool in a way, because you could basically take your 8-year-old or your 10-year-old child out of one of the gates and go ride some pretty insane terrain if your child can do that. So interesting rules. It's good to read over them and understand. There are another set of not really official rules, but more unofficial rules. You may see a flyer. I saw a pamphlet last year, and this is sort of a little side note, but I wanted everybody to kind of understand where the what is the way to say it? There's a strong snow surf based community and ethics that has been in Niseko for like 30 years now. It's sort of, I would say, you know, the core of it is definitely the Genten family, that whole crew, and there's a bunch of other people too that most of them came from other areas outside of Hokkaido, Tokyo, etc. A lot of them started off as surfers. They moved to Hokkaido, they settled in Niseko, and they, over many years, you know, developed the terrain and the lines and built up this sort of community. And one of the pet peeves that everyone in Niseko really hates, the locals that is traversing. Snowboarders traverse a lot, especially beginner snowboarders or people who are just sort of getting into like side country and powder riding. The real heart of Niseko is all about the fall line. And I don't know if this comes from like a surfing mentality or I think skiing definitely has it. Skiers like to go fall line, you know, you want to go get speed, go down the mountain and make turns on the way down. Not this sort of going across the mountain. But the terrain in Niseko, certain areas, especially Niseko Hirafu with the famous Center for Lift and Supercourse. There's a course called Supercourse. It has this big face with all these kind of ridges on the side. You can ride in on the ridge and ride down. And back in the day, when it was off limits, you kind of had to sneak in there on a stormy day. And when the patrol didn't see you, you could ride the ridge, and then you would like find a line, and basically, maybe that's what it is, because it was kind of not allowed. You had to get in there and get out of there as quick as possible. So you'd find a line, you would ride down it, go through the river, come out, be like, yeah, I nailed Supercourse. And now that there's sort of it's allowed, I don't know if there's actually a gate there, but I think there's a section where it's not roped off and you can go in. And a lot of people tend to traverse the entire face. So when you're on the lift and you look at it, you know, there's all these diagonal lines going across it, and it drives the locals crazy. Like, they hate that. I don't know if this is a global thing or not, but it's definitely in Japan. Even in Niigata and Nagano, you hear people talk about it all the time. Like, the punters are all traversing the slopes. You know, like this is a definite theme that people harp on a lot. And last year they put out, or someone put out I won't go into the details, but there's a pamphlet, and it had a whole section about not traversing the slopes. Now, this is interesting because it's a style thing. It's a personal preference, right? Some people might like traversing the slope, and to say to people like, hey, you gotta ride this way, it's kind of a tricky one, right? It's not really a rule. Like ducking a rope is an obvious no-no. Like if you duck a rope, you're not supposed to be doing that. That's a rule. But to say, hey, you can't traverse this slope, people like to traverse. They'll maybe ride down, then they'll go sideways to get another section. They'll ride down. It's sort of a style preference, and it's a tricky one. But I gotta agree, I like fast fall line riding. I do not like slopes with tons of traverse lines, because then for the person coming down on a more straight fall line angle, you're going to be crossing and hitting all of these tracks, and it sucks. You have to like ollie over them, or, you know, if you hit a hard traverse line, man, it's not a fun experience. So that is sort of another well, it has been written down, but it's one of the more local Niseko rules. Another factor that you have to think about and be aware of in Niseko is the daily Niseko avalanche reports. It's very good to read the avalanche reports. They're on the web. It's a little PDF that's published every day. It has weather information, wind information. It talks about what gates are going to be open. It's a service that's put out by a few people who've been doing this for years. The Niseko Avalanche Institute, I believe, is the group. Then one of the local Niseko legend skiers is the boss character, and he writes it in Japanese, and it is translated then into English, and you can find it bilingual version. It'll usually be posted at the gates, like next to the gate, so you can actually read it before you go out the gate. And it's some technical weather information, you know, northeasterly winds at 5 meters, becoming stronger in the afternoon, you know, like this kind of technical stuff. Plus, you know, where the snow has been built up, where the dangers lie, that kind of thing. It's a good general overall report, and because it's done every day, if you're really serious about your snow science before you come, you can go back into their archives and look and see like when there was a warm weather spell, when the winds came from the south. You can really get into the weeds if you want to. Now, that being said, sometimes there are very interesting little stories added to the Niseko Avalanche Report. What I mean by that is it's not all business sometimes. It's all business, but sometimes anecdotal stories and like, let's say, what can I say? Something happened, someone got a hair up their butt and they really want to let off some steam, and you will see that happen in the report. And it can be quite interesting to read the reports. Now, someone, I forget the name right now, sent a comment on one of my Carmentary videos and actually copy-pasted one of the recent avalanche reports. And I'm gonna stop here in a minute and read it because it's really funny. At least I thought it was pretty funny. It has a little story, and it's a very relatable story, and it's a thing I think that happens a lot in the Niseko area. And this will give you a good example of what you should not be doing in Niseko, and what happens when you do what you should not be doing. You know, like a little slap on the wrist, you know? Back in the day, the teacher in the classroom would come around with the ruler, and if you were fidgeting and picking your nose, you'd get smacked, right? Doesn't happen much anymore in the Western world, I believe. It used to happen a lot here in Japan. And that kind of a culture sort of still lives on in the Niseko area and the Niseko Avalanche report. So let me see if I can find a spot to pull over, and I will read you this report because it'll give you a little background, give you a little insight, and we'll close on that. So before I can get to a spot to stop, oh, there's a parking lot coming up here quick. Please, though, have a look at the Niseko rules. They're very common sense, very basic stuff, but it's just something like if someone asks you, like, hey, did you know you're not supposed to do that? Be good if you took a moment to read the rules. They have flyers and pamphlets printed everywhere. Another thing to be careful of is Motorola like radios. Those are highly illegal here in Japan. A lot of people bring them over and use them. You can and will get caught using them. The police will give you like $1,000 fine if they catch you using one, and they can scan and track the radio frequency, and they will wait for you at the bottom of the mountain, and they will catch you using your little walkie-talkies. So please be careful about that. Now, let us read this Niseko Avalanche report from the other day. Thanks, Neil. This is from Roof Shower, who sent me this comment. Thanks, Neil. I found this information contained in today's official Niseko Avalanche report on the Snow Japan website, and it starts. Yesterday morning at Annupuri gate number 2, while many people were waiting for the gate to open, one guy trespassed the rope just under the gate and started riding down Osawa as a matter of course, period. The ski patrol tried to halt him, but he ignored and rode all the way down to Moiwa. That's the resort next to it. The poacher's escape did not stop there and kept going, riding down the road until he miserably fell when he almost got hit and killed by an upcoming bus. Let me read that again. The poacher's escape did not stop there and kept going, riding down the road until he miserably fell when he almost got hit and killed by an upcoming bus. He got yelled at by the driver, but his escape didn't stop. He unstrapped his board and then started running down the road towards Kando no Mori Hotel as fast as he could. This is so good! The ski patrol is an ex-national athlete and had no problem following the poacher. But he kept a safe distance to avoid any accidents. You like this? This is like some of the best material. So the ski patrol basically chased the guy from the top of the mountain. He cut the rope, poached the Osawa line, which is like this big valley, followed him all the way down. He goes to Moiwa, the resort next to Annupuri. He skis down the road, almost gets hit by a bus. The patrol's like following him, tracking him, but keeping a safe distance, okay? We continue with the story. Shame on this poacher. We even feel sorry for him being such a kook. This case will be discussed during the committee's meeting next week. The poacher is identified, and if he doesn't show up for an apology, he will be banned from riding in Niseko. The Niseko rules is the area's official regulation, and nobody is exempt from it, no matter their experience, knowledge, skills, nationality, ethnicity, age, or home. Have a nice day. That is so classic! Oh my God! This is like one of the greatest avalanche reports ever produced. Not that I've read all of them. I mean, this is like, there's so much to unpack here. I don't even know where to start. I think you get the point. This is written in Japanese and it's been translated to English. Obviously something has been lost in translation and maybe some things have been added in translation, but I think you get the vibe. Like, they're pretty hardcore about this. Like, some guy ducked the rope. Who cares? Maybe if he dies, it's on him. No, that's not the thought. It's like, these are the rules. You break the rules, and we see you breaking the rules. We're gonna follow you to the next resort, down the road, past the hotel where you almost get hit by a bus, and we're gonna find out who you are, and then we're gonna mark you, and we're gonna make you come in and apologize, beg for forgiveness, or we're gonna ban you from riding at the resort ever again. Like, that's some hardcore stuff. That's what you have to understand is going on. I think people, you know, Japanese people are so nice, you know. They never say anything bad, they're never mean, they're never angry. Yeah, that's true too, but there's an undercurrent that maybe you don't always see. And there's a strictness and a strength, especially when it comes to rules and policies. And you will not be forgiven very easily. So keep that in mind when you go around ducking ropes, cutting the gates, running around without a beacon, and doing stuff in Niseko. You could be the one talked about in the next avalanche report. Now, I guess that's about, I don't know what else to say. I mean, this is like, I'm gonna save, I screenshot that comment because I would almost like to print this out, put it in a little frame and put it on my wall because it's so good. Like the way it's written, the English, the whole thing is just, it's such a classic, iconic story about Niseko. But in truth though, most of the accidents, avalanches, a couple years ago, there was, where was that? There was an avalanche and a death a couple years ago. Harunotaki, one of the more dangerous areas, out of bounds, completely out of bounds, off limits spot, Niseko. Osawa that they talked about in there, that thing has avalanched like fully all the way to the bottom. There was one a few years ago in the spring. I don't think anybody was in that one, but Mizuno Sawa in Niseko Village is also a very dangerous sawa. You also have to understand that Japan and Niseko are not allowed to use dynamite to do avalanche safety stuff like other resorts can do in North America and Europe. I have gone with the patrol at Niseko Village in the early morning. They do some avalanche safety work, but it's all with like these big firecrackers. It's not real dynamite. They have this little firecracker and they light it, throw it in there, and you get this bang. And you know, I was right there watching it. It's a very weak firecracker. I mean, a very sensitive snowpack with something there, it'll set it off, I'm sure. But if there's some deeper layers or something, you know, that little firecracker did not seem like it would be equal to, you know, what you see in North American resorts. So you got to understand that the risks are higher in these valleys, and there's a lot of terrain traps. I know everybody's powder hungry and you want to get in there first and get those first tracks, but the best way to get them is just get up early. Get up early, have your coffee, be the first one online like the hardcore locals do, and you'll be one of the first 10 people up there. You'll get through the gate and you will get your fresh lines. All the major avalanches and accidents have, not all, but the ones I know of have happened because people duck ropes, go in spots they're not supposed to, and boom, something happens. So keep that in mind, and read the avalanche reports. If you see a little story like that, maybe take it with a grain of salt and have a laugh, because it's kind of interesting. But just understand the culture, understand the dangers, and stay safe. Sorry, this was kind of a long one. I hope it gives meaning, or you learn something, or at least maybe you want to do some more research on your own. Have a good one, everybody, and I'll be back soon. Drive safe.
If you like to drive around and talk about the latest happenings, this is the channel you need. So subscribe and follow Carmentary.